So we, as you all know, have a number of community planning linkage studies going on. The Route 4 corridor study is actually sort of a partial update of an existing study that was done 10 years ago. It also expands the study area slightly to include pieces in the town of North Greenbush. It was a partnership between the two towns. Excuse me. So I will turn it over to our consultants, MJ Engineering and Jackie Hakes and Chad, to review the presentation.
Sure. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm going to stand here. Sorry, I'm over your shoulder so I can see the screen. Yeah, Sandy, if you want to move on to the next slide. We do have a lot to cover, and Chad and I were really struggling with what to highlight for you all today, as we know you have a full agenda. But we're going to walk through very quickly some of the study overview, existing conditions highlights, just some of the things that really stuck out at us that were important as we were considering what improvements and what concepts we needed to be exploring. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chad to walk through those concepts. I'm sure most everybody has been in this corridor or through this corridor at some point in time. And you're probably pretty curious of what some of the improvements are. So next slide, please. So as Sandy had said, this was an intermunicipal study, which was a little bit of a unique aspect. But I also think really brought a lot of really good information to the table. So it included the town of North Greenbush as well as the town of East Greenbush. And it was funded through the linkage program, and our team at MJ helped prepare and facilitate. Next slide, please. As a result of that intermunicipal aspect, we did have a study advisory committee with representatives from both communities, as well as CDTA, DOT, the Transportation Council, and Rensselaer County. Next slide. So we're going to move into the study overview. So the primary corridor did run south from Mannix Road in the town of East Greenbush, north to the town of North Greenbush at Route 43. So that was the intersection. That was the study corridor. Pretty lengthy corridor. We did also have a secondary study area because this is a regional draw for this corridor. So taking a look at kind of what was going on from a more regional perspective. Next slide, please. Our objectives, not uncommon or to other linkage studies, but really to look at the traffic operations deficiencies, accommodating future growth. In both communities, there's growth happening in this corridor. So understanding what the current deficiencies are, what the impact of that future growth might be on future deficiencies, and looking at ways to improve the entire system. So not just from a vehicular and a freight transportation standpoint. So looking at improving mobility, reducing traffic congestion, promoting economic development, safety, and integrated multimodal system. So we started this project in the summer of 2022, and we are now wrapping it up. It is out. The final report is out for public review now on the study website. And so we're getting public comment as we speak. Next slide. So the tasks, typical linkage study tasks, there was that study advisory committee. We had 5 meetings. And one of the things that I wanted to point out with the study advisory committee, it was a pretty technical, well-informed committee. So we could get right into some pretty high level conversations. But we did do a walk and talk at our second meeting. And that was really, really helpful. I think we were able to walk the corridor together and really understand what was happening in the corridor. And I do want to point out, Andres was part of that when he was prior to his role at the town of Colony. And so he, Chad, myself, the SAC representatives from Transportation Council as well, walked the corridor, stopped at key locations because we could not walk the whole corridor. It's not walkable yet along the entire corridor. And we were able to see some of those traffic concerns. And we were able to see some of the challenges from a slope perspective because there's some steep areas there. Next slide. So I would suggest if you're going through that, get out and walk the study area with your SAC. We also did, a series of data collection. So we did turning movements at 5 different intersections. We also looked at pedestrian movements and signal timing. We prepared that existing conditions memo that helped us understand what was going on. Did that future operational analysis to understand with growth what the impacts would be, and then prepare that final report. Next slide. So there were two public meetings that took place as a part of this, as well as a survey. We're not going to go into all the detail, but we had a wonderful turnout for all of the public engagement. We were at the DeFreedsville Fire Department in person, also Zoom. We did hybrid options for both of the public meetings. I'm pretty sure we exceeded the capacity in the firehouse, but we won't talk about that. But we had a really great turnout. And next slide, please. What we did is we kind of had a mini visioning session, both with those on Zoom and in person. And we asked them, what do they like about the corridor? Number one thing, nothing. We asked them what their concerns were. And we asked them what the challenges were. And the biggest challenge that came out of that was traffic. So we did this word cloud. The larger the word, the more responses that reflected. Next slide, please. We also had a survey that had over 780 respondents, so we were very pleased about that. And we asked some similar questions, and we started to see some common threads and some common themes come out of this. Next slide, please. So when we asked folks, why are they there? Why are they coming to the corridor? People are shopping, they're dining. What was also interesting, there are a lot of residences, a lot of people that live just off of the corridor that need to access that corridor. So that was interesting to understand that perspective. And when we go to the next slide, we see some very common things. Traffic keeps coming up, traffic congestion, and anything related to traffic. That really started, clearly we knew we had to address that. Next slide, please. And the second public engagement, also well-attended, hybrid. We had it at the Columbia High School. And this is where we had the opportunity to present the concepts that pretty much remained intact, even as a result of input from the public, but to share those concepts and get input. Next slide. So there's just a next slide, please. From an existing condition standpoint, we did, the typical existing conditions analysis. But if you go to the next slide, one of the things that jumped out at us was the crash history and the crash data. This heat map, the darker the pink, the larger the number of crashes over the 5-year period that we had data for. And that really, stuck out at us, like we need to look at this a little bit more. And if we go to the next slide, almost 55%, so 237 of 428 crashes of the data we had were occurring at intersections. So the 3rd Ave intersection, the Walmart Plaza intersection, this is where a lot of these crashes were taking place. So that, coupled with the public engagement information that we were learning from the community, the residents, the people using this corridor told us we really needed to focus some of the improvements on those intersections. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad to talk about what we talked about. So next slide.
You go to the next slide, please. So when we looked at concepts, we wanted to look at some that were short-term, medium-term, long-term to be able to implement. First one we looked at was optimize signal timing and improve system coordination. We also thought this was a good time to possibly use some adaptive signal control as well. On top of that, we also looked at some service road options. Jackie touched on some of the topography of the corridor a little bit. There were some steep slopes on both sides of the road and some things and some challenges that we had to work around to find some locations for those service roads. And those were to help reduce the load on Route 4. So rather than just increasing capacity on Route 4, we wanted to look at what can we do to reduce the capacity or reduce the demand on Route 4 itself. Beyond that, we started to look at, okay, where are the problems in the corridor? And there's 2 southbound lanes through the entire corridor that go to 1 lane once you go south of Walmart. But northbound, there's only 1 lane. It's actually opposite. It's 2 lanes and then it drops to 1 through the corridor. So we looked at that and determined that another northbound lane would help with progression of traffic through the corridor, given the amount of traffic that it sees today, plus the amount of traffic it's going to see in the future. Next slide, please. Beyond that, with New York State DOT policy, we looked at roundabout intersections and all the intersections for improvements. And then beyond that, we looked at, okay, what if we took the signalized option and the roundabout option and put them together? And I'll go into the details of these in just a minute. So that's what we looked at. We looked at the two northern intersections at Route 43 and also Blooming Grove as traffic signals, and the other three southern ones as roundabouts. Next slide, please. So the optimized signal timing, again, we could coordinate it from Blooming Grove down to Walmart. Route 43 was a little far away from the other two intersections and didn't need to be coordinated with that. We wanted to try to improve progression through the corridor, especially in the northbound direction. There's a pinch point between Third Ave and Blooming Grove that really slows down. And I live in Maple Park, so I drive this all the time. So in addition to seeing it as part of the project, I live it too, because I go there shopping and everything else. So, and it happens at all different times of the day too. So again, queue spilling over really congested area through that section. So we're looking at what we can do for that. Next slide, please. So the service roads, we want to try to reduce the load on Route 4. And by doing that, we were trying to figure out origin destinations and where people wanted to go. Also, where can we put them? The east side is a very steep hill. It goes up from Route 4. There's a couple residential roads. There really wasn't anywhere that we could get from the southern portion to the northern portion straight through without either messing up business or a couple houses or something like that. And we were trying to reduce that as much as we could. So we looked at the west side. Originally, we had 4 configurations. We took 2 of those, made them 2-way options. So we had 6. From there, we looked at the list again. We ended up removing 1 of those and then adding 4 more. So we ended up with 9 total, or 9 at the end that we looked at, 10 total. And then that was reduced down to 4 after some analysis by the Transportation Council on the potential to reduce the load on Route 4. Next slide, please. So this I have a little bit of animation showing which ones that we had come in. So if you can, next, please. So this is our 2A, pretty quick and easy one, end of Blooming Grove down into Home Depot. Because what a lot of people do is they come down 43 and they cut through up Blooming Grove, and then they come out to Route 4 and go through there. So what we figured is if we could reduce that load between this intersection closest to me here and the one down and Third Ave down there, then we can relieve that congested area. Next one, please. So the next one was 2F. So we kept the 2A piece and we added a 2-way connection from 43 over to Third Ave. Next one. And then to build on that a little bit, we brought another connection in between Home Depot and Target to help with getting people into the plaza instead of having to go around. So it helps reduce the load on the 43 intersection and everything leading into the plaza. Next one, please. And then building on top of that, we kind of took the connection up through between Target and Home Depot and added it over on the right side. North is to the right on this map, just to orient everybody. And so that intersection with 43 would be a 2-way intersection in this option, a 2-way with either a roundabout or a signal. Those details we didn't really look into quite yet on this, because our main focus for the intersections was along the Route 4 corridor itself. Next slide, please. So these are the 4 that we came up with. These are the potential load reductions on Route 4 itself. They use the regional demand model to analyze this with the roads closed and then open to see what the change was on Route 4. Next, please. And as you can see here, 2I in the AM and 2F in the PM, or southbound, sorry. Northbound and southbound direction were the highest values, but as you can see, they're all pretty close to each other. So that's why these 4 were taken and moved forward. Next slide, please. So the additional northbound lane was building on the first option that we had. The service road options can really go in, we thought, at any time, whether it's with the initial one, in between, or with one of the longer term options as well. So again, improving the corridor, the additional northbound lane would pick up where the second lane drops at the southern end of the project and to the north end where it opens back up to 2 lanes prior to the New York Route 43 intersection. And again, this is a good chance for some adaptive signal control application as well. Next slide, please. So again, we looked at all the all the intersections as roundabouts. The Route 43 intersection provided a unique challenge that I hadn't seen before, where there was just too much traffic and a 2-lane roundabout would not handle it. We would have had to put in slip ramps on all approaches and possibly a 3rd lane on some of the approaches, and through our coordination with DOT, there wasn't an appetite for that at this stage, going to a 3-lane roundabout, because that's something they haven't done yet, so. So that kind of led us to the next alternative, which was a mix of, well, no, you're okay, thank you. So what we did is we had signal at Route 43 and the next intersection down, and then since those last 3 intersections are so close together, and any Q spillage would go into the roundabout, which would cause the roundabout to fail, we made all of those roundabouts as well. Next slide, please. So the phases. So the question is, how do these fit into the short-term, long-term, medium-term, and long-term phases? So the optimized signal timing coordination, that's a low impact, low cost one that you can do with just equipment installation at the signals to help with progression, and possibly some more equipment for the adaptive signal control. Next slide, please. Service road implementation. So like I said, we think these can go in at any time. More than likely it'll be after the first one to see what, the signal improvements will do for the corridor. And at that time, and analyze it and figure out what the need is at that time. Is there a need for a northbound lane? Is there more of a need for the service roads? Things like that. So, and also, there's a lot of sidewalk gaps and other things. So as the properties get developed, the towns are urged to include pedestrian and or bicycle facilities in those redesigns as well. Next slide, please. So the long-term full build out, we had 3 options to choose from. It's either the additional northbound lane, all the roundabouts, or the partial roundabout signal. Well, as we discussed, the all roundabouts doesn't work because Route 43 fails. And the topography really made it difficult to put those roundabouts in at those 3 intersections. Further south you go, the more the slope goes up. So you're really getting into dropping off down to Walmart and Target on the west side, and on the east side, you're really going up a hill too as well. So it really would have caused some real challenges for the roundabout. So the full build out was the additional northbound lane, along with all the traffic signal upgrades and everything else to help with the progression through the corridor. Next slide, please. And there are also some other improvements that we talked about throughout the report. Pedestrian connectivity, possibly putting some transit stops along the service roads and additional stops along Route 4 to help also reduce the load on Route 4 for people who are willing to use those alternate forms of travel, along with bicycle accommodations. The service roads would be a good opportunity to put in like a loop system, maybe add some sidewalks and or a multi-use path to help with people in the area being able to walk around and have somewhere safe and somewhere nice to walk. And also some driveway consolidation. This was also a challenge for us. There were some areas right around the New York State residency, the nursing home, the fish fry, Stewart's, and McDonald's. We figured I think there's 5 or 6 driveway openings there that we can get down to possibly 3. And also, the DOT residency has an issue with getting plow trucks and some of their bigger trucks out of the facility. So there's some recommendations in there to, if you can realign 3rd Avenue extension a little bit with that, then they can have a phase and be able to get out through this traffic signal, which will make it safer for them and everyone else. So next slide, please. And with that, we'll pass it back to Jackie to do the next steps.
Thank you, Chad. So I know we are throwing a lot at you guys. If you want to dive in a little deeper, nyroute4.com is the project website, and the full report and the appendices are there. All the concept plans are in Appendix A, if you want to take a look at that, or Appendix 1, the first appendix. But in terms of next steps, the hope really for this intermunicipal study is that it provides that baseline and the foundation for the towns to be able to start that coordination with property owners for things such as sidewalk improvements, perhaps service roads, because we do realize, particularly with some of the service road options, that's on private property, right? So there's gonna be a lot of coordination, but maybe as development is occurring, making sure to leave those opportunities for those connections to take place at some point in the future. And giving, giving the towns, something to work with. But we are hopeful that this study will be something that'll be useful. There's some big ticket items here, but that's why, as Chad walked through, there's also some lower hanging fruit that hopefully will have some impact in a positive way, even through that signal coordination. So we just want to thank everybody. Please take a look at the report, share some comments through the comment form if you would like to. But thank you for the opportunity to share this with you all today.
Jackie, Chad, any questions, comments?
Actually, that's one. I just had a question. What role there's a school off of there, and what role did you see that playing in the transportation during morning or afternoon?
Yeah, that's right across from, or it's right between the two coffee places, and that's another problem location of this corridor because of the number of people going to Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks that are directly across the road from each other. And also the Montessori school, which is up the hill. My neighbors went to the Montessori school and complained about that all the time, so. Yeah, that's another issue with that. So what we did is we looked at some different configurations of that road, of Grandview Road, as well as different entrances into the coffee places to help alleviate some of that congestion there that happens at the intersection of Route 43. I'm not sure exactly how much of that was due to the school, but it definitely played a part. But I think the main part is the coffee patrons are the ones causing the blockage, not the other way around.
I noticed that was like the hot thing on the crashes. So.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, Third Ave, that one, and also Route 43 were the three highest.
Starbucks doesn't have adequate parking, so everything gets congested there.
Yes,
And the queuing for the drive-through.
yeah, goes back out to the road, so yeah.
Yep.
We looked at lengthening their driveway, giving Starbucks an entrance a little farther north, so people had a little bit longer to queue. Maybe giving them a left turn lane into Starbucks to give them a queue spot. So we looked at a few different things there to try to solve that.
Anything relative to the east for a service road? If you're looking at Agway, and is there area that could be utilized? Going up the slope behind the Starbucks, behind the Dunkin' Donuts, behind the 16 handles, all that area.
Yeah, we did look at that.
Hooking up to Best Road maybe, or something else to the north.
Yeah, we did look at that. We didn't really look as far as taking it to Best Road.
Mhm.
But within the corridor, going from Grandview over to Agway, and there's another road in between, I can't remember the name of it right now, but through it's a steep slope, number one, in a lot of those spots, and we would have had to possibly take out a couple houses along that other road in between in order to get through. Because if you go further up there, I think that's the road with the water tower is at the top of,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. So there were some challenges over there that we felt were a little bit too much to overcome. To put something on the east side. We really looked at it for a while to try to find anything that we could get, maybe even just from Grandview to that unnamed road. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. Might be Thompson Court.
Yeah.
To Thompson Court, and then, but we weren't gonna get enough out of it for it to be worth it at that point. So then with the room on the west side, a little bit more friendly topology and connections, especially with where a lot of people are coming, especially in the evening, they're coming from work, they're coming on the ramp, kind of give them a nice quick shortened trip into the developments to help alleviate the traffic on Route 4.
What are the municipalities preferred alternative thus far? They leaning towards anyone?
They're in agreement with what we had in the report with the signal alternative, for the long-term option with the service roads in between, and then, the signal improvements up front.
I think 2I meets the needs of North Greenbush with the planned development to the north of Home Depot.
Yeah.
Because they'll need that road badly.
Yeah, Route 4 is just gonna get worse.
Who owns the property that the service roads were proposed on? And then who would own the service roads once they would be constructed? The one service road cuts right through Home Depot, but
Yeah.
that would be a public road, correct? It wouldn't
Correct.
be a-
That was the
Oh.
intent,
So
yeah.
then the town would take possession of it, and then Route 4 is a state route, right? And was the state a partner on it? I didn't see who.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, so yeah, there were state partners, on the SAC, and they also reviewed, the report and the concepts and provided comments, and we were able to incorporate, those suggestions and comments into the final
But
report.
there's acquisition involved.
There would be at some point
Yes.
in time, yeah, which is why that's a longer term, item, but you have to start somewhere in terms of the conversations, and so we're hoping this is, you know.
Was there any land use analysis, the zoning analysis,
There was.
if we build this road? We're gonna stimulate more development, what are we looking at for? No, you know,
Yeah, yeah, so, you know, Steve, there's a couple of things, so, the town of, East Greenbush is in the process of going through a zoning, update. And had, you know, prepared a build out analysis, et cetera, and so we were looking at what the current zoning is, and the zoning in this area was really not changing much based on, the proposed zoning that's going on right now. But we did look at what the potential could be, and utilize the growth rates from the Transportation Council to understand what the additional growth could be and the type of growth that might be in that area. Because this, you know, let's face it, this corridor has a lot of challenges from a traffic congestion standpoint, but it is an area of potential growth, tax generation, you know, economic growth for both communities. So it's trying to find that balance.
so the report didn't recommend any zoning changes? The baseline zoning would stay the same with these service roads going in?
Correct, no zoning changes were proposed, but we in the report, we're trying to encourage that this be utilized as a tool and a resource for planning boards, for example, when they are reviewing plans, say, hey, you know, if you're on the Route 4 corridor, is there a way to consolidate your driveway with your neighbor? Is there a way to add sidewalks if there's a gap? If you're over near the Target Plaza, is there a way that you can, you know, think about this as a service road corridor as you're designing your development, because it will help you, right? If, you know, for any developer and development that's happening, make it easier for people to get to your business. So that's what we're hoping that the study will be used for.
Was there any level of service analysis for the traffic signal? I mean, you know, was there a big benefit? The
Yes.
traffic
Yes,
for,
yes.
The optimization helped. The additional northbound lane helped out a lot more too, just because you're trying to push a lot of traffic through. And what we looked at for development was, over the last 20 years, we looked at what the growth was, and we said, okay, if it continues at that rate over the next 20, what's that gonna give us as far as like traffic volume wise and everything else? So that's what we used as our basis for our analysis, and that's all in the report with the level of service analysis as well.
cost estimates, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Yes.
It's just, well, the last meeting, we had the presentation on Hoosick Road. And Hoosick Road, it just seems so similar, and Hoosick Road, the thing was at the end, right? It was, what are you gonna do? Really not much to do, so you'd hate for this corridor to become a similar one to Hoosick Road, where you paint yourself into a corner with development and lose out on options. Yeah, I know here, I don't travel this corridor much, but the topography is
It's a challenge.
quite substantial, right? This is the one where you go up and everything goes on a hill.
Yes,
everything,
they're gorgeous, stunning views. I mean, we got to see that on our site visit, beautiful views, but challenging from improvements. And you know, I do want to just point out, and I don't know if anyone from the town of North Greenbush is joining us virtually or not, but we do know the planning board chair has been a part of this and has had conversations and had questions, and you know, has kind of pointed to this study for some development that is, you know, being considered there. So hopefully it's already being used as a resource.
We have a question from the online crowd. Are there a lot of crashes on the corridor?
Yeah, there
The
were,
answer is yes.
yes, pretty simple, yes.
Yes.
You know, I think just to wrap this up, the Route 4 corridor, we talked about Route 7 in Brunswick last meeting. There are other corridors similar to this in the region. that all have similar characteristics. And I think what you're going to start seeing over this next couple of years is more attention being paid to managing these corridors as best we can. We don't have funding to do mass widenings all over the region, and I don't think anybody really wants that anyway because of the implications of that. And so signal coordination, up just, in some cases, even just updating our signals will go a long way to helping and again, providing those alternative transportation options, alternative access options. And a lot of this hinges on what you folks do locally through your planning boards and through your local decision-making processes. You know, when you're working with developers to design sites, you know, are you thinking about connecting your driveways? Are you thinking about shared access? Are you thinking about service roads and these sorts of things, you know? And I think these are gonna be important themes that you're going to see repeated here time and time again about what is a good planning practice. Otherwise, we're gonna lose these corridors and your hands are gonna get tied. Whether you're in the community, you're in your state DOT, if it happens to be one of their roads, you're the county, it happens to be one of your roads. So, you know, just keep these themes in mind. I think those of you who've been here a long time, I know I've been hearing the same stories for 15, 20 years. We keep talking about these things, but we don't often see it executed at the local level. So, you know, one of the things we'll be looking for, especially as we update our regional transportation plans, what additional tools and resources can we provide to help you help yourselves? That's going to be an important thing to keep in mind. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Alright, moving along. Administration, previous meeting minutes, August 7th. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor, aye? Opposed, abstained, carries. FHWA FTA certification review.
Yes.
68 pages that I.
It's a lot of document that I'm gonna super summarize here for the group. So we had our federal certification review back in March. Some of you will remember, we had a survey out, we had a site visit here. The federal team, which included, Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, kind of reviewed the whole MPO and all of our practices. And this past month, we received news that we have been recertified for the next 4 years. 0 corrective actions, and corrective actions would be, you know, the most severe finding from the cert review. So that's good news. There were 13 recommendations and 4 commendations, or another way of just saying noteworthy achievements. I'm just gonna walk through very, very quickly, just at a high level, just sort of the recommendations, because that's going to impact some of our planning work moving forward. So specific to our Unified Planning Work Program and the TIP, these two topics are of a similar theme. We're taking a lot longer to do everything, and it's not gonna notice by our federal partners, whether it's the planning side or the capital program side. So we as an MPO need to work with you folks as sponsors to figure out ways to continue to move things along. You know, TIP task force, obviously we'll have to look at our obligation issues moving forward. But these two themes are issues that are not new, but were certainly pointed out in the cert review. For performance-based planning, we need to better coordinate with CDTA and NYSDA to explain to the public what we're doing with performance measures and how we're actually using this information in the planning process. So that was another finding. For public participation, you know, they noted at the time we met back in March, we were just restarting our equity advisory committee. They encourage us to do that and make sure that group has a role in our long range plan. I think that will easily be satisfied now that the EAC has restarted. For our coordinated public transit and human services transportation plan, they encouraged us to broaden engagement with a more diverse group of human services transportation stakeholders. They thought we were kind of narrow in our view, and you get a lot of survey responses. So they provided some resources, they being FTA. So when we tackle that project in a couple of years, we'll hopefully do a better job to get better input from the service providers. Transit assets management came up a lot, and we have to work with our friends at CDTA to better meet the federal requirements on their transit asset management plan and to better connect how we're spending money here to actually improving their system. So those will be things that we'll be tackling. For intelligent transportation systems or ITS and the congestion management process, the CMP. There's a couple of recommendations related to us just sort of investing more in this overall topic. And it kind of relates to the presentation we just had. Maybe we need to consider developing a regional concept of transportation operations with Andrew. Is your he talked about in our congestion management process paper a bit. We also could consider doing an ITS strategic plan as a region, but the point here is sort of bridging that gap between just identifying a series of strategies that we know help improve the system for specific to ITS and transportation system management projects, but actually programming projects related to those types of transportation improvements. Our regional ITS architecture has been a topic of conversation for a long time. What that in the simplest of simple terms, that means is the computer systems that are behind our signals and behind some of our technologies that have now kind of reached the end of their useful life. And, you know, possibly looking at updating that, figuring out how signals can better communicate with each other, better coordinating with all the signal owners, the CDTA, who's invested a lot in our signals in the region. So that's another item that was pointed out. And they also want us in our congestion management process to further evaluate as best we could and can how seasonal and event-driven congestion impacts the congestion. So when we talk about Hoosick Street, for example, that Friday night, Sunday afternoon thing, which is directly tied to folks headed to Vermont, right? What more can we glean from that information? Or a SPAC event-driven day where there's a big concert or something like that. The Belmont, you know, what are those big events that can have an impact on traffic? So that's another recommendation. In the area of complete streets, I think, you know, they felt like we were doing a good job on complete streets, but we have a number of networks. We have an active transportation bike ped network that we loosely use for some things, and our partners at CDTA have their transit network. And I think what they're saying is for our new long-range plan and moving forward as a region, that we should devise a regional active transportation network, actually have a map that shows this is our complete streets network as a region to target complete streets investments to ensure that we actually build a network and not just a piecemeal approach to different corridors in the region. So that's another area that they are recommending we consider. In the areas of kind of climate, zero emission vehicles and resiliency, these two bullets really reflect issues that we know we want to do and just haven't had the staff time to do it, which is to do our own regional carbon reduction strategy, which partially we've been waiting on the US EPA project at CDRPC to kind of wrap up so that we can tie that together, and then also building a resiliency improvement plan so that we can access sort of funding that can support you know, known flood prone areas in our region and building resiliency into the transportation system through that. So those are two things that we had on our to-do list anyway, just haven't gotten to. And they certainly are continuing to encourage us to fund and utilize the planning and environmental linkage study approach to project development, which, you know, is tied to, we have 3 of these right now, the 787 project, the 890 project over in Schenectady County, and the 378 bridge project here between over the Hudson River, Chin Rensselaer and Albany counties. And I just think that's a good tool for these larger investments, and would like to see us continue to utilize that tool. So those are the recommendations in the 4 areas that they commended us on our work relate to our public participation outreach. They really felt like we go above and beyond with the range of strategies we use in public outreach, whether that's virtual tools, in-person tools. There's a whole laundry list of things that we're doing that encourage community engagement into our process, and they thought that was a good practice, as well as the practice of us building public involvement plans for each of our core planning documents. And that allows us to track through an equity analysis. They also commended our work in ADA, investing in the Americans with Disability Act transition plans and our coordination with Native Nations, which has been ongoing. They also commended us on our regional truck parking study in this area of freight planning. Not a lot of NPOs have tackled something like that, so they thought that was a good model. And then on our public transit, we found out, and I think the statistics still play this out, that we're still one of the only transit agencies in the country that has not only returned to pre-COVID ridership levels, but have actually begun to exceed them in some ways. Most of the transit authorities around the nation have not even recovered to pre-pandemic levels, so something is different here. You know, we don't exactly know what, but something is different here, so it's a credit to CDTA and the work we do here at the table. And of course, our regional investment in the bus rapid transit did not go unnoticed. So that is the wrap up of that, but any questions? And again, you know, I share that more so that when you see our unified planning work program and you see some of the ideas within that, some of that will be coming from what is being cited here. Any questions about that?
Sandy, I'm not familiar with the term human transit. What was that? Is that CDTA related? Is that our, when we do our buying of vehicles for other agencies for?
Yeah, so we nicknamed it the coordinated plan. So you might have remember Carrie updated that last year where we talk about transportation for seniors, for low income
Yeah.
residents, and you're right, part of that is for these providers of transportation, think Catholic Charities.
Yes,
type
that's what
groups.
that is.
Yep.
The title is huge and I hadn't seen it
It's
before.
it's the technical legal term, but we kind of nicknamed it the coordinated plan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Is this every 4 years?
Every 4 years, we have to go through this process. I find it helpful because it gives you feedback as an MPO on where you're doing, where you can, what you can do better to meet the federal requirements, and then also gives us the opportunity to say, hey, you know, just reflect on what we're doing here. I think the document is long as if you flip through it, but there's a lot of good information in there.
There's also a lot of picking nits in there too.
Picking nits.
Yeah. Picking nits,
Picky,
picking nits.
It's a new term.
picky comments on the council. Is that-
Nitpicky, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Overall, I would say.
I thought it
that
was
done well.
positive. Yeah, I took it as positive. I think the recommendations are reasonable and things that we can actually accomplish or at least make progress on in the next couple of years.
Good. Moving on, appointment of a vice chair. Sandy,
Yes, so I've reached out to Mr. Wallen to take on the role of vice chair since we had a departure. We're bringing this to you folks for action today. I do want to keep in mind, we do have a Schenectady County theme here. If anyone is not comfortable with that, now is your time to speak up. This is for the remainder of the fiscal year, which ends the end of March. So we will accept nominations for these roles again in the January-ish timeframe. So, you know, if anybody is interested in a leadership role, you are welcome. I'm sure they will agree.
the Schenectady theme is not that long. You know,
This
that's
person
why my
is-
last tip update for
This
sure.
might be the end for Mr. Feeney, so, you know, we'll.
This won't be, you know,
Legacy
years in
choices.
the,
Right.
So the chairman-elect was really.
well.
Possibly, but you know, again, I just want to encourage, you know, it's not a heavy burden and Chris, thank you for offering to back up Steve in the event he can't be here.
So we're looking for
I'll make a motion to elect Chris Wallen as vice chair.
Second.
Mark, second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye? Opposed, abstain? Congratulations.
No pose, no abstain.
Oh,
There we go.
There you go. You gotta make sure you're here on time. All right, thank you. All right, moving right along then.
Yep, so this infamous fiscal constraint table, so, you know, as you can see in the chart. Per our practice, we are fiscally constrained, we're within our plus or minus 5%. For all the fund sources by year. This is the last time we're gonna show you this to you guys like this. We've talked to Federal Highway and FTA. We do have to maintain a table like this, and that's always available on our website. But we're not gonna spend time dwelling on it any longer in meetings. We also found out the 5% plus or minus is not in law. That was a decision that was made between my former director and the former Federal Highway staff representative. It is completely just a number they picked. So, you know, given the nature of how the federal funding has changed over the years, you know, the idea behind this was we used to view these fund source budgets more as hard numbers, and they are much softer than they used to be, as we all know. NISTOT has the ability to pull statewide resources in on a moment's notice when the opportunity arises. So that's why we refer to them as targets now. But to continue to dwell on them, probably is not a good use of our time. So this will be the last time we're gonna show this to you. Jacob, do you have anything you wanted to add to that? Yep.
Something, in the event that a major shift, and the percentage would have to be determined.
Mhm.
Of the programmed projects, that the number on the total becomes like critical.
Yeah.
Could that then come to as a
Absolutely.
discussion
If we
point?
see an anomaly or we see something getting well out of whack back as we're tracking it, we would certainly bring it to your attention.
Right, yeah, right, I appreciate the table, it's just from a funding source standpoint, I don't even really look at the percentages as much, I just like
Yeah.
to see, you know, what goes where, because. 12 years ago, I was sort of looking at the matrix, and now I can kind of understand the ones and zeros, so
Yeah.
it is useful to see.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do on our website is following each meeting, when we take actions and we make changes, we'll update this and keep it regularly updated. Maybe add some percentages at the end so you can see like, you know, you know, at 105% of that fund source or at 95% of that fund source, just to provide a little bit of additional information. But to dwell on this in the way it was conceived is no longer necessary as far as we can tell.
We will miss table 4.
I'm sure you're gonna be very sad to see this go as a
Or to table 5.
regular,
We have a funeral service. for-
maybe. We can.
Just a week. All right, just a week. Action items, right? Tip improvement program amendments, County Route 109 Kennedy Road. We have someone who's representing this, Saratoga County.
I'm here with CPL. We're doing work with Saratoga County, so if there's any questions, I could answer them, or if you need any update, get that too.
What are we doing here, Sandy?
Sorry, I'm struggling with my
Yeah.
PowerPoint here. Let me just get out of this.
Basically a cost increase of 2.5 million, right? That's what we're at.
Yeah, the original alternate included construction of a new left turn lane for the westbound traffic on County Route 109 heading southbound on a Plank Road. And then upon evaluation of 2 design alternatives, including a left turn lane alternative and a roundabout alternative, the roundabout alternative has been determined to be more feasible. So that's the cost increase, and you can correct me if I'm.
Yeah, no, that's correct. And the roundabout alternative was dramatically better level of service improvement at the intersection. We got some marginal improvement with adding the left turn lane. So the original TIP application came with a left turn lane alternative only. When we did the kickoff meeting with DOT and the county, DOT suggested that we look at a roundabout alternative. So when we did, it emerged as a much better, there's a much better benefit cost ratio. They suggested we did a benefit cost analysis, and the benefit cost with the left turn only was a 0.38. And then with the roundabout alternative, it went to a 1.24 benefit cost ratio. So obviously,
It looks like it's using HSIP funds, which really doesn't impact anything because the state has a challenge spending it, so it's actually a good thing. to be able to
Correct.
spend HSIP money in this region.
Yes, so I was gonna mention that, again, this is an example of what I was just talking about, of the region able to grab unspent resources and bring them to us. And the safety funding in particular has been challenging to spend statewide for some reason, but we've got a lot of projects that qualify for it, so we'll continue to do that as long as that's a possibility.
That's basically where it's coming from.
A statewide,
State
statewide
cloud.
pool,
There from the cloud.
cloud.
yeah.
Okay,
No impact to right away, the stream, I kind of know some shit. There's no acquisitions or anything, or is there acquisitions on it?
The acquisitions will be actually similar to what the left turn and actually a little bit less, believe it or not, because the linear impacts are reduced. So you got a little more impact in the immediate vicinity. Actually, the roundabout, where the roundabout is, there's a town parcel in the one quadrant, so that is less of an impact in that quadrant. And then the linear impacts are less because the left turn lane was gonna be have more at least west impact. Roundabout is it's not more narrower through the corridor there.
all right.
And just for the record, we do have a linkage study that's just starting on County Route 109, so we'll be coordinating with the county and the two towns on, you know, considering this project as part of that discussion.
Any questions, comments? We need a motion to approve this amendment and cost increase of $2.53 million in HSIP funding. Can I get a motion?
I'll do that.
Second.
Madam Chair.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Second amendment. CBTA. Maintenance, training and operating
Yeah.
facility, we got a $900,000 cost increase.
She's right behind me.
Hi, good morning. So CBTA has a maintenance facility in Schenectady, and we're looking to purchase the adjacent property currently occupied by the Gazette. In hopes to eventually use that to expand the exceeding capacity Schenectady facility. So this is just a new project to add 900,000 to make payments on that property. Just payments against the note once we acquire the property. The objective is to close on that in the next month or so. This is using our 5307 funds that are formula funds that are currently unprogrammed, but they're not available to any other municipality. They're designated.
Yeah,
funds.
their choice.
We're not taking anyone's.
Not taking anybody's spot.
funds available to anyone else.
Any questions?
The Schenectady garage gonna be abandoned, you're gonna use that and the new facility.
Initially, the objective overall is to use both properties, but right now we would continue using the Gazette building, just administratively, the leases of that, the current occupants will stay as we make plans to we have no plans to get rid of the other properties, just expanding the overall footprint.
Because they're tenants in that building now, right, Livingston Energy and.
Yes, all the tenants will remain at least through the end of their existing leases.
And what share of the debt is this 900,000 covering?
I don't have the exact numbers. I think it's around, I think the total is around between 5 and 6 million. So I don't exactly have the details of the whole funding structure, but
It's close enough.
we'll have a note, and this will just begin payments on that note as we look at other funding options.
Any question? So we need a motion to approve this amendment. $900,000 for the acquisition of additional property for CBT. Make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Her voice, I just didn't see.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries, thank you. 2025. Transportation planning project solicitation guidance.
Yes. So we, as per usual at this time of the year, we issue a call for planning projects, to add to our unified planning work program for next year. Similar to what we've done in the past, as a reminder, our work plan begins April 1st of 2025 and goes through March 31st. Right now, because of the backlog of existing linkage studies, I'm saying minimally, I don't have a good budget figure right now, but minimally $250,000 in federal funds is available for new linkage and or ADA transition planning work. The share structure is 90% federal, 10% local cash. Unfortunately, due to some changes in how we deal with our match requirements, I can no longer use in-kind services on consultant-led work. So we had to return to cash, but that's a lower match. Sometimes in the early years, we would have like a 20 or 25% match on these studies. So it is trying to retain the affordability of this for those who are a little more cash strapped. We're gonna cap the total project costs at $150,000. That's the maximum request. I'm hoping there will be more funding available once we complete some of these linkage studies that are already on our books over the next few months. Eligibility, as per usual, our local governments and our member organizations are eligible to apply. You can have nonprofits as a co-applicant. We're gonna target this, like I was alluding to our traditional linkage program planning work, and our ADA planning work. For linkage, sort of the targeted subject areas are complete streets plans, corridor studies and concept plans, neighborhood and area plans, sub-area studies, if you will, zoning and land use regulations. That's a big one. We've been focusing a lot on corridors of late, but I want to make sure that communities understand that you can apply for zoning code revision work as well as land use, other types of land use plans. And then active transportation plans, similar to what I mentioned earlier. So those are the types of things that we're encouraging through the linkage program for next year. And then for ADA, in past years, we've done a separate solicitation for ADA planning work. We just folded it into this solicitation just to streamline some things. The eligibility is similar to the past, where we can collect data on the condition of sidewalks and other street features, including multi-use paths, to review their ADA components. And then also we can work with the municipality to adopt an ADA transition plan, which may include a policy statement, identifying a coordinator, and developing a complaint grievance process. We have a list on our website of all of the ADA transition plans that have been funded to date. And we'll be evaluating these using a different methodology than the linkage studies. So for linkage, this is basically the same methodology as last year. The arrow I put on here because we had a typo in what we sent you, or in the packet, just highlighting that we had some old links in there. But this is the same set of evaluation criteria we used last year. And then for ADA, we will be evaluating those projects on a 100-point scale, using the same criteria that Carrie had in last year's solicitation. But again, we're just folding it into this for efficiency. I did want to point out, for cost estimating purposes, if you are considering a transition plan, you should estimate your lane miles, your sidewalk miles, I should say, at about $550 per sidewalk mile. That should help as a benchmark for your cost estimate process. And in terms of the process here that we'll be using, we're going to probably issue this on October 7th. We'll have a sponsor workshop at noon, actually, on October 17th. It's not required, but you're encouraged to attend. Applications will be due on December sixth with, our staff evaluating and prioritizing everything through the month of December to bring to you. You will note, and this is a good time to mention it, we are gonna have to shift our whole planning committee schedule of meeting dates next year for numerous reasons. January first happens to be the first Wednesday of the month. So our first meeting in 2025 will be January 8th. To avoid conflict with the Saratoga County and Planning and Zoning Conference, we're gonna shift the February meeting to January 29th, which also solves the problem of us not having enough to meet our 25-day public review process between our planning committee and our policy board meeting in March. So keep those dates in mind. So January 8th, we'll share our recommendations on new studies and projects, and then we'll fold that all into the UPWP, which we'll share with you guys on January 29th to open that public review period, and we'll wrap it up at our March 6th policy board meeting. And I think that is it on the solicitation. Any questions?
Motion to approve the solicitation.
Correct.
Can I get a motion to approve the solicitation report?
Sharon?
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second, Mark, thank you. Further discussion, those in favor, aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries, thank you, Sandy. Move on to discussion items 2025-26. Tip development,
Yes.
say there with.
So we're going to share with you folks, some preliminary information on what we know about the upcoming Transportation Improvement Program update. To start with, this slide, was prepared by Jacob, to kind of document what we know sitting here today. This is why it's preliminary, on the existing project roll-in. So this table does include what, for some of the projects that we have information on, what those cost increases or cost changes would be. But as you can see, the significant things to point out here, this is all the fund sources we have available to us. Some of these we do not program during a normal update, like CMAQ funds, for example, or the freight funds. They are rolled into the tip. What happens with some of those fund sources is if there's a cost overrun on a project, they usually go to the core funds, which are the fund sources I circled here in red, which are the ones we typically program here at our table. The NHPP is the National Highway System Funds. The STBG funds are our Surface Transportation Block Grant funds. These are the most flexible fund sources that have the broadest eligibility, so they're amongst the more popular ones. The NHPP is limited to use on principal arterials and interstates, so the higher order roads in the region, if you will. And then we have the HSIP, the Highway Safety Improvement Program funds, which we talked about earlier as a popular fund source that's not at our table, not being used in other parts of the state, so we kind of reap the benefits where others are not using it. And I circled those 4 fund sources because we have a flex and some dedicated funds to the large urban area and the Albany area. But going back to the 2022 year, when we built the last tip, our typical allocation, our allocation, I should say, for those 3 fund sources was about $75 million a year. The roll-in, this is with our preliminary numbers for those 3 fund sources alone, is $229 million. The last tip update, our roll-in for those 3 fund sources alone was $86 million. I can't impress upon you enough. We've kind of been saying it subtly here for the last 6 months. The roll-in was going to be significant, and these are preliminary figures. I do expect them to go up. That means there is not a lot there to program, okay? To illustrate that a little more, this slide shows the planning targets we had for the 2019 tip as well as the 2022 tip. We do not have the targets for this new tip, which is the 25-30 timeframe. But with our preliminary roll-in estimates, again, here's that 229 million on these existing fund sources. based off of the target, and if we assume that we're gonna have similar targets to what we had 3 years ago. Already for a lot of these fund sources, 60% of the funding spoken for, and that's before. We've gotten through the full assessment of the existing program and any other cost changes, so. It's not the best news for new things coming into the tip, but I just wanted to set expectations up front. Before we issue this solicitation, that it is going to be limited, it is going to be a bit more targeted. And we are going to have to make some tough decisions as a group moving forward. Any questions about that before I move on?
Yeah, the funding.
Yep.
That 229 from the previous tip, that's
Yes.
not rolling with it, so. I guess I'm just trying to,
It's not good, yeah, so Jacob,
Right, there's not 229 additional
in.
million going in,
right,
since that's just what's in 26 and 27. And like, the targets will basically refresh for those 2 years.
Right.
So you don't get to hold that with you.
the money does not come with you in the tech update. Except if the project is officially obligated. which goes
Right,
in the
if it's
first year,
obligated, then it's.
And it's really not part of the equation
Right.
anyway.
I just. Did we leave money on the table doing this, or are we just over programming to this extent? It seems like we're leaving money.
We're not moving our projects along, that's the story.
Right.
And so what happens is these funds are probably being scooped up, like we're scooping up the HSET. Other things in New York State are scooping up what we're not using here, because we haven't.
That's what's happening.
Yep,
Okay.
If it was obligated during this tip, you would have new money. On it.
Right,
Mhm.
right, that's what I'm doing, all right.
Yep.
In
Any
other
other
words,
questions?
finish your projects.
We've been saying it for the last 6 months. We try to be nice about it, but now you're seeing the numbers and the reality of us not moving the program along and getting some projects completed or at least obligated. And like I said, this is preliminary. I do expect these numbers to continue to go up. The biggest concern for, as the MPO, is this STBG large urban category, which is already 70% spoken for. And this is probably the fund source more than any of the others that we spend on the complete streets type work. There's just not capacity there to do a lot of new things. So when we go into the solicitation, you'll see some, yeah.
That, that point that you made about, finish the projects,
Mhm.
is that a new, new or a unique situation that hasn't really happened in years?
We've had roll-in and slow projects development in the past. This is the worst it's been in quite a number of years, and there's a number of reasons for it, right? I mean, COVID started it. It snowballed from there. We also found out this DOT region has the worst obligation rates in the state of New York. That we're trying to get a handle on why that is. And we'll be exploring that over the next few months. It could be a blip in the data that we've received at that moment in time. It could be related to, state and local capacity to move projects along. I mean, we've heard everything from staff shortages at both state and local government to lack of consultants available to move things along. Then you get into material shortages, cost increases due to inflation, all these other factors, and it could be just a snowball effect of all of those things coming together at once. Unfortunately, what it means for us is it's not really an exciting tip update, and the need to make some tough choices as we move forward. This table, which I know is hard to see, Jacob also put together to reflect the information we do know today of the cost changes. What's interesting is in order to balance out the program, DOT's program, they actually cut back significantly on a couple of their projects. So the net impact of what we know right now looks like it's actually in a negative. But we also know there's a lot we don't know quite yet. And without those two changes to these two specific projects, this picture would be a lot weaker than I already described it. So, as we work through this tip update with you all, we'll be adding to this table, and we'll see the more complete picture moving forward.
I haven't seen this table yet, but one of the questions I would just ask for going forward, is, would the Crane Street Bridge, would that be eligible for the new bridge funding? So that it could free up the urban funding? We know that yet?
I think it would depend on if it is on off on System Bridge. I think the answer is yes, but I don't.
Yeah, I would just, if that's gonna take urban money,
Mhm.
I think it would be best if we don't use it, if
Yeah.
we use something else. But, yeah, that's
Yep.
good that it balances in the way it does.
Yeah, and I'll point out too, on this table, I mean, we note CMAC here as the fund, so obviously there is no additional CMAC, so, you know, any cost increase related to this particular project would have to come out of other sources of funding.
In relation to that, for something DOT might be able to talk about it. The approved bridge mix is changing to a green mix or something. And the potential cost of concrete could triple as a result.
That's probably a question we can bring back to the department, because I don't know that we in the room have an answer to that one. I heard that. I know there's a bridge conference coming up where I think they're gonna talk about some materials, so stay tuned on that. We're trying to get more information.
Story Bridge sooner.
Yeah, got ours done this year.
So these slides were generously provided by our friend Greg Wixer at DOT. I am going to zip through them quickly just to give you folks listening in an overview of what we think to expect. The tip instructions, as I said, we haven't gotten the official document yet, and we have not seen the planning targets yet. What Greg has seen internally indicates to him that for sort of the procedural piece of this, little is changing for the local sponsors. They are going to be, they being the department is going to be encouraging active transportation type projects. But again, coming back to our fund sources, we may not have as much available for that kind of work that we would like. But that safety is one category that we can program some work in. DOT is also, our regional DOT folks are also proposing, don't have budget numbers assigned to them yet. They don't have full fleshed out proposals yet. These are just some ideas that Greg wanted to bring to your attention. One of the ideas is to have a set aside for implementing the state's pedestrian safety action plan, which would be consistent with our SS4A, our Capital Region Vision Zero planning work, where we use systemic level treatments. And there's an approved list of those from DOT that we'll make available to you folks, where we can target several locations in one project to implement pedestrian safety work. And the question, that Greg has for this group to think about is, do we want to add another fund to cover the work that is not currently eligible for PSAP? So one of the things that's come up in the past is signal work, where you can't replace certain components of the signal, or in some cases, the entire signal, because it's not eligible. But do we want to have a set aside or use this set aside as a tool to deposit some funds so that when those situations arise, we have a fund source to fix those challenges when they come up? So that's something being proposed, and as you can see, it's all sponsors. It's just not for the state DOT. This is for all of us. The second piece is the federal aid signal set aside, which again pairs with what I just spoke about with the pedestrian safety side action plan implementation. Again, that would be for all sponsors to actually help work on the signal. And then the third proposal is for us as a group, a region, to hire an ITS consultant to actually do the technical work to help with signal coordination and identifying the best available technologies to implement in some of the corridors that are congested, and kind of targeting those congested corridors. And that would be available to all of us as well. And then the final proposal that DOT wants to put on the table is related to ADA compliance and actually implementing ADA transition plans. And they're offering this idea to the local sponsors only. On state highways, NISDOT would cover the entire match for a project, but if it's on a local project, or a local highway, I should say, the Marchicelli funds would handle the 5% match. So we're just throwing on the table today on behalf of DOT. There'll be additional discussion certainly once the guidance comes out. Obviously, we have to assign fund sources and all that. You know, just something to keep in mind for you folks, of course, is the fact that if we do agree that these set asides are valid and we assign certain dollar values to them over time, that's going to chip away at that balance of funding for new local projects and new state projects, right? So these are going to be some of the conversation points we'll be having in future meetings. Any questions about that before me? And then final thoughts from staff here. I think we're gonna target issuing the solicitation by October 15th. We're hoping to get the guidance between now and then. So we could provide further information to you. But either way, we just want to respect everybody's time to make sure that you guys have the solicitation materials in your hands by October 15th. We're gonna hold an optional tip workshop here on Thursday, October 24th. From 1 to 3 p.m. where we're going to talk about all things tip and the application process and eligibility. We'll have the submission deadline December 6th. It is the same day as a linkage ADA solicitation, but we've streamlined our job form considerably, so I think it'll be a lot easier. And I've heard from the past that our job form's a little easier than dealing with grants in New York or so. We already have it pretty easy for you folks. I think that, what we've streamlined will be even easier. And again, we're probably going to insert language into the call letter that really encourages local governments to think about HSIP eligible projects. If you can get that BC ratio calculation done now over 1.0, it's going to qualify you for those highway safety improvement funds. And that fund source, we have the best chance of accessing year after year after year for when it's not spent elsewhere in the state. We also are thinking about the fact that we have this huge backlog of projects. How are we going to fairly assign projects, the new funding to new things? If you're a sponsor who's got 5 unfinished projects and you come in asking for a new one, we may not give you the same priority as maybe the community that doesn't even have a TIF project, but has a need. As long as the scoring is reflective of deserving of funding first, right? So these are things we're going to be thinking about. And unless Andrew, Jacob, you have anything else to add, that's sort of where we're at with things on the solicitation. Any questions? Sorry to be the bearer of some not so great news, but we'll see how this plays out over the coming weeks and months.
Okay, tip admin modifications, is that where we're at, Jacob?
Yes.
So this kind of goes back to our rolling conversation. This month we had 40 admin mods, which many of you know that's a lot. Usually we have like 3 or 4. But these are all the admin mods that we made due to stiff tip performance. So basically any project that had phases still in fiscal year 24, we worked with local sponsors in the state to kind of identify all of those and roll out those project phases into fiscal year 25 and 26, so that they're now back on schedule and can be obligated. So I'm not going to go through them all since there's 40, but really this is, an action that kind of reflects that roll in and, a need to kind of obligate these projects sooner. But I encourage anyone that I talked to previously to just go through this list, make sure that your project's on there. If you think it needed to roll into 25 or 26, if it's not, reach out to us and we can make sure that it's where it needs to be.
Okay. Any questions for Jacob? the theme, Jacob, here is what? Is there any common theme or is it all?
It's mostly moving, construction and design phases from 24 to 25 or 26. So they're all scheduled. For the 35 stick performance moves are, the first couple on the list were typical admin mods. There might have been some
Yeah.
funding adjustments in there.
And these will be the projects, because of going back to that roll-in, we're gonna be looking at these.
Right.
And
yeah, these
try and
would be-
understand what's going on with
Yeah.
all of these, because this is what's tying up all the funding. And it's a lot, it's a long list.
Okay, local project delivery, Jacob, that's you also. right?
Yes, I don't have any specific project updates this month, but as always, right, we've posted our most recent. Project tracking sheet. We encourage anyone to give us updates on any of their projects. In the meantime, going forward, I've handed over this role to one of our new staff members, Adam Carville. So I've kind of gone over our process and reaching out to sponsors and asking for updates on their existing TIP projects. So expect to be hearing from Adam in coming months.
Cindy, I will say that I started here 12 years ago. There was a project on the tip, Kings Road Bridge, that had been on the tip for a decade when I started. We poured the deck for the Kings Road Bridge last month, we poured the coach slabs this week, and the bridge is gonna open November 29th. So that is one of those. I don't know how it stayed on for so long, but 20 years and it'll be completed.
Yeah, and and that's great news. I think one of the things we as an MPO are gonna have to start thinking about, we kind of did this for the linkage study. For those of you who've been around a long time, maybe 10, 15 years ago, we were not moving linkage studies along. We had to put some soft caveats, like if you don't get your MOU signed by a certain date, you're risking your funding. I'm not saying we're gonna go that far. I mean, that's discussion for the planning committee and the TIP task force, but these are things that we might need to start thinking about as an MPO, is putting some accountability into the delivery of these projects and come up with some milestones. If you haven't at least started your design by 2 years after you've been programmed, you're gonna need to come back and explain why, something like that. So these are things we'll be exploring.
Thank you. Nice not delivery, is that?
Yes, I'm filling in for Greg and Randy, who both are on vacation right now, so they send their regards. So our most recent letting was for guide rail and sign replacement on routes 4 and 443, and the low bid came in under engineer's estimate, so that was some good news. So the Reimagine 787 Pell study, we're expecting the final draft to come out soon, in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. And also, if anyone's interested, next Saturday, they're gonna have a booth at the Troy Farmers Market. And there's also gonna be an open house, so that announcement will come out hopefully in the next few weeks. That's all for the Reimagine 787 Pell study. And that's all.
Thank you. Status of regional transportation planning initiative.
Yes, so as usual, we have our little table that we post with materials. We heard from the about the Route 4 corridor study. The draft is out for public review right now. As I mentioned, we have about 8 other studies in various states of starting, finishing, ongoing. We're hoping to finish up a few of these over the next 5 months or the end of the federal fiscal year. So that'll free up some planning funds to do some other things with. So if you're a sponsor of any of these, we'll try to, utilize our staff as best we can to help move these along. Because they are, some of these are now pushing 2 years old. We'd like to get them rolled off. But feel free to peruse this. I won't have an update for you today on the long range plan. We'll talk about that at our next meeting.
Okay, Thank you, Sandy. Back to you, I guess, right? Can you say anything about the council? or-
Yeah, so you folks may have noticed we've gone through some staffing changes here. Jacob Beeman, today is his last day with us. He's moving on to the private sector. Rima Shamiya left us on Friday. So I did want to welcome again Adam and Parker, who just started with us within this last couple of weeks. We have another employee who will be starting October 21st. But we're experiencing a lot of the same issues that local government, state government is with the workforce right now. Which is new to us. And, for me, it's been surprising only because I've been here for so long and we've never had that kind of turnover before. So, but I do want to welcome Parker and Adam. You guys will start getting to know them over the next few months. And our new hire, who, as I said, will be starting at the end of the month as well. We still do have our long range plan update. I will be sending for the folks on the InMotion task force an email today to save the date for our November planning scenario discussion. And these SS4A, the Vision Zero Safety Action Plan, is still moving forward. Carrie will probably have some more information later this year. And then again, expect the tip solicitation and the linkage solicitation in October. So there.
Thank you, Sandy. CDRPC, Mark.
We have our planning and zoning workshop coming up on October 18th. We will have a focus on and a presentation about our comprehensive climate action plan that we're working on. We're looking to wrap that up and get the related public input through the end of this year. We'll have cover topics anywhere from new wetlands regulation that will affect developers, solar siting, hot topics in rural planning, and Sandy will be giving a presentation on micromobility. Favorite topic.
We tried to partner with Smart Mobility to look back on the bus, so hopefully that'll work out.
Some new data released from the Regional Planning Commission. We took a look at migration patterns, in and out migration from each county in the capital district. And another recent report was increases in the foreign-born population in counties of the capital district.
Thank you, Mark. CDTA. who-
Hey, I got that. This is Mike Williams. Hi, sorry I couldn't be there in person.
That's right.
Nothing new at this time. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Nice, Dot.
Yeah, we're bringing more staffing updates. So Lorenzo DeStefano is officially retired. I think a lot of you know Guy Tedesco, so he's the contact for now. So I'm sort of taking over him in interim. And Guy is also the contact for Lorenzo's retirement party, which is tomorrow. So at the bunker in Schenectady, I'm told that's October 3rd. Chad Corbett has moved from Schenectady to Albany as resident engineer. Tom Cashdollar is going to be the acting RE in Schenectady. And tip update instructions out soon.
What was the name of the Schenectady person?
Tom Cashdollar.
Tom, okay.
Cash dollar. All right, thank you, Stephanie. Thruway Authority,
I don't think we had a representative today.
Airport, Connor.
Thank you. There's nothing specific for the airport itself, but I did want to bring up just something for the committee that I have seen at the airport in recent days. Now, from the most recent hurricane that happened in the south, we did have a nonprofit that reached out to us that is trying to relocate lower income families from the south into the area. And they're saying there's a very large influx from the southern regions, so Florida, Louisiana, North Carolina, that they are reaching out for just a broader capital region district. So want to bring that up. That's what we've been seeing at the airport most recently. We have had a couple of families already come through the airport. And I think this is just going to be a growing trend as we see a lot of these larger climate change scenarios happening. So
What's the airport's role?
it's just a liaison between this organization. They contact the airlines. They let us know that they have some flights that are actually coming from Florida, from the disaster areas, bringing these families up here, either for temporary relocation or permanent relocation.
A lot of them are temporary as of right now, but they're saying that in the future, there could be a lot more of these, permits. That they want to seek out other locations that are.
But then you're coordinating with someone else.
Yeah, with the nonprofit directly, so.
You've heard us sort of tongue in cheek say climate refugees. This is exactly what we're talking about. And this region could become attractive in the future because we haven't had the kinds of natural disasters that other parts of the country have had. So food for thought.
Good article in Times today about it.
The New York Times. Thank you, Connor.
Yep.
Albany Port District.
I can update a couple things. We had our port industry day. Thank you to this organization and to others who are not only getting the word out about it, but also attending. We had around 175 people come, and people from the maritime industry and supply chain come from all over the country to speak and share knowledge and discuss supply chain pressures, which segues into what you all may be thinking I'm gonna talk about, which is the strike. That does not affect the Port of Albany or any upstate port, frankly. We don't handle container ships. So we are not experiencing a strike at the Port of Albany, and our goods will continue to move. But we are certainly keeping an eye on that and talking with industry partners as that goes on and affects the East Coast. And then related to planning and future activities, we are currently waiting on a couple of state and federal funding competitive applications that the port has submitted related to maritime infrastructure investment plans and expansion plans. And we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping to hear on that in the next couple of weeks. That would affect updates for this group as well as on next construction project.
Assuming the Port of New York is affected though.
Absolutely.
So with the transport upriver, does any delay factor in for Port of Albany?
No, the Port of Albany is a port of entry, so vessels don't necessarily need to stop at the Port of New York and New Jersey. Ports, the Port of Albany receives ships directly, and we do have a portfolio of business that's, independent. Whether there's different opportunities relating to rail activity, we're having those conversations, but stopping of goods coming in is definitely a factor.
Thank you.
And just related to that, I just wanted to share with you folks, we've talked about this oversized cargo challenge with moving the offshore wind turbines from the Schenectady GE Vernova facility over to the port. We got some drone footage, and I just wanted to show you folks. It's just a minute long video, but let me just show you what the drones captured. If you've never seen how they move this equipment through our region. Not yet. This is hot off the presses footage. We have a lot of footage through our long-range plan that we'll be sharing. We can make this available to you guys too. That's the largest of the units, I believe, which is the one that is taking 3 days to move between Schenectady and Albany. And you can see the size truck that we're talking about. This is not normal equipment.
You know the weight by any chance?
Many hundreds of tons. Very, very heavy.
No.
That's I-88 heading out to Binghamton. So just to, give you a sense of the scale of what we're talking about when we're.
But to your question before, that's likely between 500,000 and 1 million. And it's not just the weight, it's also the dimension that affects if it could go on rail or road, or if it has to be on water. It's a really good point.
All right, thanks, Cindy. So upcoming meetings, just note them, please. And our next planning committee meeting will be.
November, that's interesting, I showed here, November, double check, November the 6th.
6th. All right. Can we get a motion to adjourn, I suppose, where we're at? Move, second, all right, in favor, aye? Aye. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, yeah.